So Megan, I'm so grateful for your research, and I'd love you first to define spaciousness for us.
Ah, yes, that's a good question. And I'm not going to do it immediately
Okay.
because it's kind of ironic with this topic because it's a very important question. But as soon as I, as an expert and a researcher, define spaciousness, I've already narrowed people's attention to the factors that I'm speaking about. So just let me first say that where we've started with everybody, and we still start, and I start with groups and teams that I'm working with, is not with a definition, not with our definition.
Mm.
We ask people to just pause for a moment and recall an experience that they've had where they've had a sense of spaciousness, whatever that means for them. And there's no boundaries and there's no worries about getting it wrong or right. It's just what pops into your mind when you think about an experience of spaciousness. So let me ask you that, Mara, first of all, if you just pause for a moment and just recall a moment where you felt a sense of spaciousness, whatever that means to you. So there is no clear definition on that. What comes up?
Well, Megan, I credit you because I was thinking about our interview yesterday, and my daughter is going through a period where she just hates school. She doesn't want to go to school.
Can relate to that.
And it was she had just finished an exam and she didn't want to go to school. And it was a beautiful spring day. And I said, fine, stay home. Let's make a schedule. You're going to have a homeschool day. And I had a block of time during the day too. And I thought, you know what? I'm going to be with my daughter in the middle of a Wednesday. We went and got croissants. We went to the library. We went and saw my mom, who's in an assisted living facility, and spent time with her. And usually I'm rushing to get out of there. And I just sat. We ate with my mom. And then my daughter and I worked on the edges in the garden. It was like the best day.
It sounds it. And
And
and,
it
and let
was
me ask you
such
this.
a gift.
Yes. So what can you from that description, what if I asked you to dig a little bit deeper in terms of, well, what does spaciousness mean to you? What was going on yesterday that was kind of different? What made it spacious for you?
I had intentions. My intention was to be spacious. My intention was to not check my phone every 10 minutes and not rush and not multitask.
Mm-hmm.
That's what made it spacious.
Mm-hmm. So
And it's a battle, right? Because you get restless and you get bored, and I'm a restless, anxious person. So you want to keep going, you want to keep checking. And so it's an intentionality.
yeah, lovely. So we've asked thousands and thousands of people that, and I want to reiterate that our definition of spaciousness is not important, actually. The important work is in working with others to genuinely ask them to inquire, well, what does this mean for you? And what does that tell you about how you're living life, what you want to create, your balance between what we call doing mode and spacious mode. But you have mentioned a few things that we've noted in our research that quite a few people mention. And that includes, well, let me just compare it as well. We have these two modes of attention. And one we call the doing mode. And in the doing mode, our attention narrows to something that we need to get done. So it tends to be task focused, quite instrumental. I'm looking for use, I'm looking to meet a goal. When I'm in that mode, I see things as kind of separate, and I tend to be looking for control and predictability. Get stuff done, yeah? Incredibly important for our survival, all right? Both organizationally in our team and as individuals. The spacious mode is a different form of attention. So in the spacious mode, we are more expansive in what we're paying attention to. We're unhurried. So we don't have a narrative. In the doing mode, we tend to have a narrative which can be quite anxious, actually. It can be sort of like, I need to get this done. How am I going to get this done? Will they do what I want them to do? How are they seeing me? It's that kind of narrow sort of focus. Spacious mode, we're paying attention to relationships and interdependencies. So we've broadened our attention. We see how we're relating with the environment and others around us. We see flow and change, but we're not hurrying on to the last moment. To the next moment, and we're not clinging on to the last moment either. We are very present and here. And what happens in the spacious mode is that tends to be where we gain insight and we see possibilities that weren't controllable and predictable. And so we need both of these modes. And what we've been discovering in our research is that we may be overdoing doing. It's a bit of an overdone strength now. And although it's really, really necessary, it's an absolute disaster if we squeeze out spacious mode, both for us as individuals, but also in our organizations, which is where we do most of our research.
Why is it? I think anyone listening would think, I get it. I can't. I'm so sick of being in doing mode. All I want is some space. Tell us why organizationally it's important. If I'm a manager of a team, why would I want my team to have spacious time?
So the spacious mode is what stops us from being busy fools. So we can get stuck into a process of ticking off the to-do list. It's the spacious mode that tells us what should be on the to-do list in the first place. It's the spacious mode that tends to be where we create, where we see possibilities, where we innovate. And it tends to be the spacious mode where we build really genuine, important relationships with others. Because rather than, in the doing mode, we tend to relate with one another fairly instrumentally. It's like, right, what are you doing? What am I doing? What have we got to get done? Will you do what I want you to do so that I can get this done? That's what the doing mode is about. And as I said, that's really important. Yeah.
Really important.
I'm not dismissing that at all. Our deeper relationships and our deeper humanity comes when we pay full attention, when we fully listen and encounter the other person that we're with. And when somebody does that with us, when somebody turns fully towards us with their attention and without their instrumentality and without their judgment and expectation, it's the most incredible gift possible. It makes a profound change. And actually, at the moment, we're talking to people who are recalling particular managers and leaders in their career that somehow had this capacity for spacious mode. Whatever was going on in their pathologically busy workplaces, you sometimes encounter people that are very successful in that doing space, but they somehow also manage to pay you attention so that you can think well, so that you can innovate and you can create and you can remember why you're doing what you're doing. So that's the spacious mode. The spacious mode is where we build relationships, we see interdependencies, we look at the broader picture, and it's utterly essential to stop us from being busy fools in busily sort of ticking off the wrong things in the first place.
I'll never forget. I think it must have been you that asked me this question when we spoke about your research last year. And you said, have you ever had a manager who was spacious with you? And oh God, it was such a powerful question. I think that what a gift you can give someone. But I want to ask you another question about spacious time. In my work, as you know, I work with people who have very busy brains usually. And I have been looking at a lot of the sort of instrumentality of ADHD coaching and time blocking and how we, and it's all evidence based, help people who, struggle with executive function, maybe manage their time. And as I was reading your research, I thought, the gift of people with very busy brains is that they are wildly creative
Mm-hmm.
when they can be spacious. And yet, are we telling people that to survive at school and at work, we're blocking them so rigidly? 9:05 to 9:10, get a cup of coffee. 9:10 to 9:30, check email. Yes, that's very helpful to your point. But we're shutting down our gifts, which is that when we have time to be and think, people with ADHD, people who are neurodivergent, people like me with bipolar, that's when the big things happen,
Mm-hmm. Mm.
you know?
Yeah, I do know.
And I'm curious what your research finds about just like spaciousness to be wild, spaciousness to think.
Yeah. So this spacious mode is the mode where we have insight. Yeah, we
Yeah.
join dots that have never been joined before and wouldn't be joined in the doing mode because you're just focused on this dot and you can't even see that dot over there. So this spacious mode is where wildly creative possibilities lie. And I could not agree more with you in that education and society has got so hung up on to-do lists and actually aspects of time and time management that is ever so valuable for some people,
Yeah.
but it isn't valuable for everybody, and in fact sort of squeezes out the spacious mode for some. So in our research, we the spacious mode is not about time management. It's about
Mm,
attention management. So this isn't about, oh, we're really busy, I just need more time. Because you
right.
and I know that you can carve out a time and then you can spend all of that time ruminating, planning, or in deep anxiety. It's the same attention. You may have stopped doing something, but your attention is in the same mode.
Right.
I
And
can
your
go,
research has, oh, sorry, no,
yeah,
we're
go,
both
go.
getting excited. Well, your research has quotes from people that I would very much recognize, like, I don't want free time because then I get anxious, or I feel
Yes,
good when I'm busy, or I get dopamine when I'm
yes,
attending to my email. Why would I want to be spacious? It's just stressful.
yes. So this is, that's another key aspect. So we are time management can help because it can help people to just park some distractions, but it doesn't, in and of itself, doesn't solve any issues if we're still in the same mode of work. Yeah. So
Yeah.
we can use time management to carve out some time where we have more possibilities of expanding our attention. Okay, you can see the difference between them. Um, and yeah, one of the people that we interviewed said, if you open up space, you let doubt in, and who wants that? And,
That's right.
there are some very good reasons why we stay busy. Because if you create space where you do start to look more broadly and widely, it really doesn't take you very long before you get to some fairly philosophical questions, which is, how am I? What's going on? What impact am I having in the world? How do I relate with people? What choices have I made in the past that I may not now really wish I had made? What changes might I need to make in the future, given how I'm now seeing the world? These are big questions, and they're scary questions, particularly if we're alone. It they That's
Yeah.
why for some people it's really helpful to have help to get into the spacious mode, to be held by a coach or a therapist or a facilitator, where you can kind of manage the levels of anxiety that go with some of these questions, you see. But it is, as you say, it's one of the major reasons why we keep busy. Because if we were to look up and look around, then we'd have to face some questions that are really quite scary for us. Yeah.
Very scary. Um, One of the questions I had, thinking about spaciousness at work and on teams, excuse me, to your point, I like to help managers think about creating a container in meetings where it feels sort of like a safe half hour, right? What's your advice during chaotic times at work, scary times, stressful times, to create spaciousness? If you're just a person, if you're not a coach, if you're not a therapist, if you're not Megan, so that people can have a little freedom to be and think. Is it something that a normal person can do?
Absolutely. And I mean, our research is kind of fairly packed with ironically, lots of things you can do to create space. One of the biggest things, particularly if you're in a position of influence in an organization, is if you could spend just a few moments habitually prior to a meeting checking in with how you're about to show up and form
Mm,
an intention around that, it's quite remarkable what difference that makes. So when we've done our inquiry sessions and when we work with teams, well, pretty much always start a meeting with a pause where we ask people to check in, what's the state of your mind? How do you feel emotionally? How's your body? And what intention are you holding? And do you know, Maura, do you know that practice is regarded as weird in most organizations? To pause at the beginning of a meeting to make sure that people are paying attention. For some reason, that's weird. But it's not weird at all to carry on regardless in a meeting, knowing full well that most people are busy doing their emails on the side and not paying a blind bit of attention to what is going on. So my kind of, one of the biggest things is for all of us, if we are able to put in, sometimes called speed bumps, just
mm,
those little practices that enable us to wake up and go, wait a second, right, how's this doing? I'm about to be with a whole pile of other people, and how I show up is going to markedly affect how they think and how they speak. So if I can go in and encounter people in a slightly different way, they will almost respond. With our research on speaking up is relational. We speak
mm.
and we think depending on how the people we are with are showing up. And so that influence is something that we can all train ourselves to do. But remarkably, we don't. A lot of my other research is relating to mindfulness practice. And
Yeah.
we can train our attention. We can train, and many people would say that our attention is the most valuable resource, if you like, or thing
Hmm.
that we have in life. It's the thing that impacts ourselves and others around us more than anything else, where we place our attention. And yet we leave that up to chance. Yeah, we figured out a while ago that we can't leave our physical body up to chance. Well, most of us can't.
Yep.
Yeah, and we
Yeah.
get that, but somehow the brain bit, people still don't understand that what you're doing with your brain every day is writing the algorithm for how it shows up the following day. Yeah. So
Yeah.
we do have some level of agency there. It's just that we're not really using that to the maximum that we can. So there is a pile of other things that we can talk about as well that you can do to create more space. But those things, paying attention to how we're paying attention and how we're showing up are absolutely fundamental.
Okay, I have two questions. I have so many questions, but my first question is around coming just back to the anxiety pieces, I say that I think a lot of us avoid the check-in with ourselves, but mostly also with our teams, because we don't want the answer to be, how are you? I'm not so good.
Mm, mm,
What do we do with that? Right?
mm. Yeah,
That's scary.
it's scary, and isn't it interesting how we've created an environment where we naturally assume that you're supposed to have an answer to that, and therefore it's scary because we don't have an answer. But part of that is because there's this ongoing pressure that we're supposed to solve everything, and if there's a problem, we better get rid of it as quickly as possible, as if it's
Check it on the to-do
abnormal.
list.
Yeah, it's like as if it's a sort of, yeah, it's an abnormal thing in life to not be okay, to not have the answer to stuff. And perhaps if we regarded that as, yeah, damn, of course we don't know the answer. Yeah, of course we have days where absolutely we feel rubbish and we want to, shout and scream. Of course we do. We're human beings. If we were able to acknowledge and accept that a little bit more, perhaps we wouldn't be so scary of the prospect of having to deal and solve, when somebody speaks up. And I know that might sound a little bit idealistic, but again, the way that we've come to see the world and behave in the world in certain ways, and we sometimes don't see these assumptions that are driving us, and those assumptions are things that we need to hold up and go, why do we even think that,
Right.
and
Who told me I had to fix everything? And it goes so deep. I mean, that's why I think therapy is so helpful. What the two things that I would just share with the audience is that, for me personally, therapy, but two practices, when a feeling comes up that I'm not okay, the practice of expansion in ACT therapy, where you literally hold the words that are coming, the bad feelings, and you literally hold them in your body and sit with them, is the single most powerful thing I've ever done.
mm-hmm,
To literally be able to say before a meeting, sit with, I'm terrified. So I would, and I have lots of stuff, audience, on expansion and ACT. And then the second is that it's also okay to compartmentalize, to say, oh, this scary feeling's coming up for me, but you know what? I'm not going to deal with that now, and that's okay. And it's
mm-hmm.
okay to tell people that. I get that you're super stressed. I get that this is happening. Let's deal with that. And I promise you we'll make a plan. Right now we have to do this.
Yeah,
It's also okay to do that. To your point, we don't have to rush in and fix ourselves and fix everything. We can say, yes, that needs attention. I'm going to put that in a little box for now so that I can focus.
yeah, absolutely. And it reminds me
You know?
again of, the work that I did with Michael Chaskelson on mindful leadership. What
Mm,
we found there, and fairly, well, was it controversial? I don't know. Controversially, perhaps we said that the single most important capacity that a leader has is the capacity to create a space between a stimulus and then what would normally be a reaction rather than a response, and that is trainable. So we can train it
yeah.
through building three particular skills, I suppose, and we call those AIM. So the A stands for allowing, which is very much what you're saying. It's like, here it is. I may not like it, but here it is. It is here. So, yes,
Yeah.
a load of our energy goes into trying to pretend it's not here or being bloody scared that it is here. So this first is that kind of like, okay, yeah, okay, this is here. Let me just acknowledge that it's here. I stands for inquiry, which is, if you can stimulate curiosity, it's incredibly difficult to kind of be anxious as well. Those curiosity and anxiety things. And so and I often called it my curiosity key. And in fact, particularly when I started out and still now, if I'm about to go in and present to a big group of people, and I might be really, really nervous. One thing that saves me on more than many occasions is to reframe from being, oh my god, I'm so scared I might muck this up, to, oh, I wonder who I'll be speaking with out there. I wonder which members of the audience are kind of going to go, oh, I resonate with what you're saying. I wonder how I might be so helpful here in what's about to happen. And that's kind of that stimulates the curiosity, which immediately kind of opens us up into this more spacious mode. And the M, just to finish that off, is meta awareness. And that's our capacity to notice what we're thinking, feeling, and sensing when we're thinking, feeling, and sensing it. So it's this capacity to be present, to notice that. And if you can develop those skills, what it does is it creates this little space where you have the opportunity of choosing a response to a situation more. And that is just gold dust for all of us in our lives, but absolutely for a leader or a manager who is trying to make wise choices on how to lead and manage to the best of their capabilities.
It's the key. It's the key to life, isn't it? Shutting down that reactivity. And I was laughing last night because I I went to the Boston Celtics game. We're in the NBA playoffs, and I'm a passionate Celtics fan, and I had a really stressful day. Even though I had a wonderful day with my daughter, then I had some stress, and I ate a huge bag of M&Ms at the game while the Celtics were losing, and while I was processing all this stuff. And as my son and I were on the tee home, I said, I did it again. I feel so sick because I stress ate a giant bag of peanut M&Ms.
Yeah, I'd feel a bit rubbish after that.
That's when I'm reactive.
Yeah,
That's what I do.
yeah, and
It's like
yeah,
clockwork.
yeah, and of course we do, and then we go back to the allowing bit straight away and go, fair play, that's okay. God, we're not perfect,
Right.
and of course I was stressed, and isn't that interesting? And I wonder whether I can look back and inquire and figure out, what might have woken me up, in that
Right.
process, so that I might have made a slightly different choice. Can I experiment with that next time? So how we hold, examples like that's so important for us, and how we learn, again, individually, but also in our teams. But we all have these little habits that are incredibly difficult to kind of get into
Ooh,
and,
they're
and
so
change
deep,
course. Yeah,
Do you
absolutely.
do, do you have any little body-based practices or almost cues that you use to calm that reactivity so that you're able to create more space?
Yeah, let me talk about a couple of things. I'm just looking at a book actually on my desk, which I haven't managed to delve into deeply, but I'm really looking forward to doing it. It's called Better in Every Sense, Norman Farb and
Mm.
Del Seagal, which who you might have heard of. And they have this lovely phrase called sense foraging. And they talk
Ooh.
about our ability to tune in and kind of forage for sense data. Okay. So when we're lost in our minds and we're lost on this default narrative network that often gets stuck in a loop of over planning, over control, anxiety, all of this stuff. If we can forage in that moment, if we can stimulate ourselves to notice the sensations that we have in our feet right now, or notice what we can hear and the sense of silence, or look out of the window and notice something that you've never noticed before. These are sort of kind of speed bumps that can help trigger us out of this very often doing mode, narrative mode in our heads.
Yes.
A speed bump that I love from the mindfulness work is, for when you've had a really rubbish day at work, or you have had a very stressful day and you're about to go back into your house, and you put the key in the door and you use that as a trigger, as an anchor, to kind of do a quick scan and ask yourself, what am I about to bring into this house? Just really, really quick,
Oh,
10 seconds. What's going on in my head? How do I feel? How's my body? And what is my choice around what I do when I step into this house? And that's also obviously relevant for meetings. These are little practices that go into our, they build this meta awareness. They kind of pull us up where we can look around and go, I've just woken up again. Those are kind of
yep.
some of the practices again that we can practice. We can make those habits, and then they help us to disrupt some of the other habits that aren't doing us any favors, or the people around us.
Oh gosh, I love that so much. And I will share, yesterday I interviewed an architect who designs workplaces, and she said one of the things that in her research is coming out that's really challenging is that working at home, for a lot of us, we're on what, 7 Zooms a day, and we go back to back.
Mm.
When we were in the office, or for those of us, I would have sales meetings. I'd be on the subway, I'd be driving to meetings. That transition time was that time to turn the key in the door and
Yeah,
say, how am I? Maybe
yeah,
I'll have a cup of coffee. Maybe I'll call my friend. Maybe I'll do a puzzle. Now, when you are zoom, 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 the kids come home, time to make dinner, you don't have the turning key moment unless you absolutely create it.
yeah, yeah. If you create it, and if you have some people around you that really remind you, and they kind of dig you in the ribs and go, "Whoa, wake up!" Yeah. So that I think it's quite hard to do. It's quite hard to do by ourselves sometimes. We do need
No,
a
because
little.
our to-do list is full.
Yes, exactly. So we need the help sometimes. We have and this is another irony, which we fully recognize in our research report. We created a kind of acronym called SPACE that helps people to remember some ways that they can create a more spacious mode. And the C in SPACE stands for conflict, and
Mm.
it's and we normally think of conflict as quite negative, but here we're talking about kind of dissonance, things that
Mhm.
stop us in our tracks and wake us up. So whether it's suddenly a change of environment, or it's the ability to really tune in for just a few seconds on the smell of the coffee that we've just bought, um, or whether it's engaging in a book or a podcast that's actually not in our normal railroad tracks of what our specialism is. It's something
Mm.
that kind of expands that view. So these sort of dissonances are helpful in, yeah, waking us up is probably the best phrase for it, and helping us to become a little bit more spacious.
I love that. I'm laughing because my cat is on my lap clawing me, and my cats are very funny because they tell me when it's time to transition. So they're my little conflict. Let me just make sure I've gotten all my questions. I think I have.
I,
Oh yes, okay.
I guess I
What's
would,
that?
yeah, I just, one more thing, particularly around the anxiety. Um, we've been interviewing people that recall. So I asked on LinkedIn, I sent out a request for research participants, and I said to people, think about a manager or a peer or a direct report, somebody you've encountered at work that has been very successful in doing, but is also somebody that you really experience as creating space inside these
Mm.
systems. And then what we've done is we've had the nominee and the nominator together in an inquiry session. And we've had a look
Oh
at,
wow.
so what exactly is going on. And one of the things that we've noted is that these relationships tend to have far less of the performative noise that goes on in many workplace relationships. And by that, I mean, we spend, and most of this is kind of at an unconscious level, we have so much narrative going on around how is this person perceiving me? What do they expect of me? How am I coming across? Do they like me? What are they going to ask me to do? Is this safe? Should I say this? Maybe I better not. It's so noisy. The anxiety is so noisy. When you are in a relationship where you know that you are seen and you are respected and valued, and you are therefore feel far more safe to explore and expand your attention, it is quite remarkable. So, you know, that those ways that we can reduce anxiety, create more safety, have astonishing impacts on people. And if you're a manager or a leader that can kind of do just a little bit of that, you can have a profound impact on the people that work with you. And I've been speaking to people that have brought in somebody that they worked with on a project 10 years ago, you know, and the person they've nominated is touched to the core to hear
Gosh.
that they have had this kind of impact on others. You know, it's the most amazing research, and I'm absolutely loving it. And isn't it also remarkable how little space we make to have these sorts of reflective,
Oh my
learning,
God.
appreciative conversations as well? Because they in themselves also have a profound impact.
It's beautiful. And I will say, you said the word expectation. I'm very big on expectations. When expectations are clear, anxiety goes down.
Mm.
And so I think a simple thing managers can do is they can just be very clear on expectations
Mm. Mm.
so that the other person isn't wondering
Yeah,
so much, to your point.
yeah,
Is this
absolutely.
good? Is my work good? Am I working quick enough? All those questions that distract us.
Yeah. And you know, as a manager, if you I love to ask managers to just do a little bit of an audit on their conversations that they're having and notice,
Ah,
are people questioning you around expectations? Are people going, when you say this, do you mean that? Are people saying,
yes.
I'm not sure I agree? If you don't have these kind of things coming back at you in conversations, that's a very good sign that people don't feel safe to speak up. And that's a very good sign that it's not them that needs fixing. It's you that need to alter a little bit how you show up. Yeah. And
Mm,
some of that, you know, is difficult because you just have titles and labels that automatically kind of intimidate others. But if we're not
yeah.
aware of them, of course, we just carry on regardless. And we know that a lot of managers and leaders vastly overestimate how approachable they are, how good they are at listening as well, and the extent to which people are speaking up around them.
That's a great point. Megan, thank you. I just can't thank you enough. I love your research so much, and I'm grateful to spend time with you.
And same here, Maura. We could natter on for ages, and I'm sincerely
A
hoping
hundred
to see
percent.
you face to face again as well soon, I hope.
I'll see you at Thinkers 50.
Yes. Good. I will be there.
Yeah.